Welcome to episode 14 of Popcorn and Prosecco, a show that gives you 30 minutes of nonstop movie talk. This week we're going to cover Wolf Creek 2, our favorite monster movies, and Godzilla. I'm Perri Nemiroff, and now say hello to my co-hosts, Kristy, Puchko, and Angie Han.
Hey, everybody.
All right, so I'm kicking things off this week with Wolf Creek 2, which is the sequel to Wolf Creek, which came out almost a decade ago now, I think in 2005. So it's been quite a while since we've seen this villain again, Mick Taylor. This round this one's kind of hard to sum up because we actually don't meet our lead character until I want to say like 45 minutes of the way through the movie. But his name is Paul, and he just happens to stumble across one of Mick's victims, tries to help the poor girl, and he can't, and then Mick puts his focus on him. And if you've seen Wolf Creek, you kind of know what he does to poor Paul, and that's pretty much it. It's basically 2 hours of Mick Taylor antics and him torturing his victims and seeing what he's capable of, and I had fun with it, but that's coming from the perspective of someone who enjoyed the first movie. I actually don't think that this is going to be for people who have not seen the first movie, because the first movie is a much darker take on this whole situation, and it's taken a lot more seriously, even though the Mick Taylor character is a bit of an over-the-top villain. Here, however, it's almost slightly satirical, so if you're not in on the joke to begin with, you're not going to appreciate it now, and that villain might just seem flat-out ridiculous. I also just got really frustrated with the structure of this movie because, like I said, you don't meet the main character until 40 minutes of the way through the movie, and with these kinds of things, half the fun of it is getting to know this group of potential survivors and wanting to stick with them and hoping that they beat this guy. And here, it's like Paul kind of just stumbles into the situation, and you're like, that's after you've met, I want to say, like, what was it, 3 or 4 other characters?
There's
and you're
like 4
wait.
people. There's 3 people who are dead by the time we meet him and 1 that's escaping. But I would actually, I mean, to me that just felt like, oh, this is a movie that makes no bones about the fact that the serial killer is the main character. Like, he's not the guy you're rooting for, like, necessarily. He's not the good guy. But it's pretty clear that this is a movie about him that's focused on him. So,
well, see, that's what I thought was interesting, is that, like, I couldn't decide who the hero is. You guys both were like, oh, well, like, you know, Perry's like, oh, the hero is the guy you meet in effectively the third act. And Angie's like, no, it's definitely the serial killer. And, like, I had a problem with the fact that I was like, who the hell is this movie? Like, it's about Mick, but who's the hero? Like,
it can't be about Mick, though, because we never learn about him as a person. And that's actually a funny thing.
We learn about the other people very much either.
That's my problem with it. Because, like, the first movie, you know, you were following a group of 2 tourists and 1, like, Aussie boy that wanted to get with them. And this time, you know, we start off with Mick, and he does his carnage, and it made it seem to me like, oh, they're going to flip the script completely, and this is going to be like, Mick is a folk hero, because, like, the first sequence is him messing with cops that messed with him, and, like, you're kind of rooting for him, because you're like, yeah, those cops shouldn't have pulled him over. I mean, they should because he's a murderer, but they pull him over for a bullshit charge. So, like, in the first scene, I was like, oh, okay, and then he does his typical Mick torture porn shit that he does. And then the next scene, they introduce us to 2 German tourists who are sweet and whatever, but, like, it's not about them either, because so they're just set up to be tortured, and then, like, the girl, as soon as Mick shows up, the girl screams until she is no longer in the movie. Like, that's all she does, and that would be fine if she were in the movie for another 30 seconds, but she's in the movie for, like, another 20 minutes, and all she does is scream. That's her only dialogue, which is infuriating.
Well, I want to ask you guys something, because Roger cameo. You saw the cat thing? That was very awkward. Sorry. I want to ask you guys, because I haven't seen the first one, and I'd never even heard the first one, to be perfectly honest. I actually hadn't even heard of this one until you guys were like, we're going to review it. So I went in knowing absolutely nothing, but it didn't feel to me at all like anything was missing. Like, it doesn't pick up any plot threads from the last one, at least not that I could tell.
It really doesn't.
You guys were talking about how you don't really learn about Mick, so I'm curious, did we learn about him in the last one? Was I supposed to go into
this? In the last one, it starts off, to give some background, the last one, it was 3 tourists who go to Wolf Creek National Park, where there are weird rumors and people go missing, and they seem to tease that something extraterrestrial is going to happen. And then their car breaks down, and Mick shows up, and he's like, I'll help you back to I'll give you a place to stay for the night. And they're kind of creeped out by him. And then you find out they have a right to be because he drugs them, and then torture is the rest of the movie. But you're rooting for those characters to survive. Especially because it says it's based on real events. So the things that happen in the movie, I remember being like, oh my god, because it was like so much more brutal than I expected, because when you hear based on real events, you're like, well, clearly someone survived. But
that's been like a major thing, though, is that the entire promotional campaign for that movie relied on the fact that it is based on true events.
The first one or this one?
Just
both.
The first one and this one, really. But like the first one, people got annoyed because it's just like incredibly loosely based on the fact that backpackers went missing and they found these guys who just kind of like tortured them.
I feel like maybe the based on true events thing is just there because like I can barely remember the last time I saw a horror movie that wasn't based on true events. Like I'm
actually kind of getting sick of that at this point. But this one actually, like the Mick Taylor character, I explained in my review for Cinema Blend, like he's kind of a combination of three famous figures of Australia. One is obviously Mick from Crocodile Dundee, because he's got that kind of folksy, like, I'm a tough guy, I kill pigs and whatever thing. And then also on the killing pigs point, he reminds me of the crocodile hunter, who, if you remember, loved every animal except the feral pigs of Australia. He hated them so much, and he would tackle them, and he's like, they don't belong here! And so they take that idea and they run with it with tourists for this movie and for the last movie. Like, Mick hates foreigners to the point where he hunts them, tortures them, makes them his plaything, and then kills them. That's what he does. Third is a real-life serial killer whose name is, like, Yvonne Malat or something like that. And he actually was found and convicted of killing at least, I think, 5 to 7 backpackers who they don't know, he may have killed more. It's kind of one of those things, like they kept finding bodies and then eventually they figured out it was this weird guy who was doing this. So like there was a backpacker murderer. That's a real thing. But like they take great liberties, and I really was bored with this movie until the third act.
Did you like the first one?
I did, until the third act of that one, ironically. Like, basically, I'm not going to spoil Wolf Creek in case you haven't seen it, but that was actually really shocking to me. To me, with these kind of movies, where so much of it is how brutal the kills are, they're good the first time because you don't know what to expect. And, like, the first Saw I remember seeing and being like, oh my god, this is so mind-blowing. And then every Saw after that, I was like, oh, this is just gross.
It's like, funny. I think maybe part of the reason you don't like the third act of the first Wolf Creek is the reason that I like it, because they did something that I did not expect to happen whatsoever, but then it kind of left us hanging in another respect.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Give me a hint. Is it like, does it get extra brutal? Do they explain something? Like, you don't need to lay out all the spoilers, but I am lost now.
If you don't want to know the end of Wolf Creek, which, again, came out like 10 years ago, so whatever, just skip ahead like 30 seconds. The end of Wolf Creek, the 2 girls that we follow for most of the movie are murdered, and then they jump to the guy who has been knocked unconscious basically for the entire movie, and he gets away, and then it says, like, and he got away, and no one knew what happened to the girls, so it set it up under the context of, like, no one knows what the hell happened to those girls because he claims, like, there was this weird guy, he knocked us out, I woke up and ran away. So, like, the entire middle section, the main chunk of the movie, is complete, speculation. Like, wild, unfounded speculation.
It is kind of smart, though, in a way. It's like, it makes me think and it freaks me out that the one guy that got away from that situation is the one that, like, knows nothing about what happened. Like, he really doesn't know Mick at all, so, like, he can't warn everybody, and that's why more tourists fall into his trap.
That's interesting.
Because otherwise, couldn't they have just, like, come and caught Mick and put an end to it all?
But it's the real life shit that bothers me. I didn't like the third act of the first movie because I feel like because of the whole based on real life thing, it undercuts everything that happens before it. In this one, I really like the third act because that's when Mick and his victim are in close quarters, and it's not just him car chasing around the wilderness. Like,
that was one of the only part. That was the part where this movie started to get a little bit more interesting to me, and that comes in, like, really late in the movie. So this is a long way of saying I mostly found it boring. It's about, like, a killer you don't really know anything about. It's about people you have nothing invested in. What happens when you sick this killer on these crazy backpackers.
That's kind of what I was talking about before we started broadcasting, was the fact that, like, I mean, actually, it's not really connected, but I'm going to connect it right now, is that, like, when their victims act normal, like, they have a better chance and the movie becomes more interesting, versus the lunatic backpacker girl who basically took poor Paul down with her. But in the end, when you're sitting there and they're having, like, an intelligent conversation, that's the more suspenseful part to me, is when they're sitting there just, like, face to face, and he's basically like it gets really tense, and all they're talking about is history.
Yeah, and that's also one of the parts where the movie is really Australia-y, which is one of the things that sets this movie apart from most horror movies I've seen. I haven't seen that many that are not just set in Australia, but like really like we are about Australia. Like there's like a scene where kangaroos are jumping across the interstate, or I guess I don't call it that.
There is like at least a half dozen, if not more, kangaroo deaths, like brutal kangaroo deaths in this movie. I feel so bad for them.
He has Mick as like an insane nationalist. That is interesting, but I wish that they had played with that more. Like the last scene really plays with that, and I like that about it. Even though
the most we know about him is how he feels about all the history. That's like the only character development he gets.
Yeah, and it's
one of the only interesting things about him and about this movie, and they don't really deal with it at all until the third act, and then by that time it's too late for it to be anything except for him creepily chasing this other guy around and trying to figure out how to dispose of him or whatever. So
yeah, like to Angie's credit, she said when we said let's review Wolf Creek 2, she was like, should I watch the first one? And I said, you know what, I actually don't, because I'm curious, one, to see how someone can respond to this movie having not seen the first one, and I had already watched Wolf Creek 2, and I was like, I don't think you need to see it, especially because with Wolf Creek 2, they literally repeat methods of killing. Like it's really
that's so disappointing. I mean,
it's like
that's his like signature move.
But that's the thing. In the first one, it was terrifying.
And that's true. I think I think they really found someone with that injury, and I think that's why that became his thing.
But like, do you understand what I'm saying? Where it lessens the impact. Like that's why it shocked me so much, because in the first movie, she's set up as a final girl, and the way they take her out is just one of the most brutal things. Where I was just like, oh god, there's no coming back from that. And like to just have him do it.
It's also such a mindfuck too. The fact that like you're just left helpless like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and that's the thing. In this one, it's just repeating the same thing. Like his go-to move is like, well, now I'm gonna cut your spinal cord. Like, okay, I don't know. We've seen it. I was so excited to see Mick Taylor back, and all the posters and stuff were playing him up as this like ultimate villain. But then it was just a rehash of what we've seen him do before until the final act.
So overall, thumbs up, thumbs down.
I give it a thumbs up if you saw the first one and you liked it and you like this kind of horror. I had fun with it. This is my thing.
Yeah, I am not typically into the torture porn stuff unless it's got good characters, and this one doesn't care about its characters at all, so I'd say it's a pass, or if you want, watch it when it comes to VOD.
I think the only thing that made it worth watching was like the weird streak of Australian nationalism, but it's such a small part of it that unless you're like, I really want to watch a movie about Australian serial killers, I don't think that this really offers a whole lot that you can't get from tons of other movies. And
yeah, go watch Snowtown Murders.
So yeah, I guess that's it for this one.
All right, Angie, you want to take it from here? Monster movie time?
Yes, it occurs to me that this is a really particularly terrifying episode of Popcorn and Prosecco, because we're going from like one type of monster to talking about other monsters to finishing with like the biggest, like literal biggest monster of all. So in honor of Godzilla, we decided this week that we want to talk about our favorite monster movies, and the one that I picked is The Host by Bong Joon-ho. And I guess I'll start by explaining it. It's the Sorry. Okay, so it takes place in South Korea along the Han River, and one day a monster just emerges, and that's basically the plot. It obviously right away it gets to terrorizing the local population. The protagonists are a family. There's like a dad who owns like a snack shack like on the shore. They're not very well off. All he really has in life is his daughter, and she gets snatched by the monster. So then the rest of the movie is him and the rest of the family kind of trying to get her back and trying to defeat the monster. It's a really weird mishmash of tones that works really well because it's funny, it's kind of genuinely scary at some places. It's also like surprisingly sweet because it really is like a family movie. Have you guys seen this film?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great movie.
I have not, but you're selling it well. There's a sequel to this also, right?
There is a sequel, but it's one of those sequels that's being made like without the involvement of the, and like, So I don't have high hopes for that one. One of the things that makes The Host unusual is that you see the monster right off the bat. It's not that big, and you like I feel like a lot of movies, they kind of just try to like shroud it in secrecy and they wait for the big reveal. This one right off the bat is like, here he is. This is what he looks like. He's not that big and he's not like, immediately terrifying
to. He's like the size of like probably like a tractor trailer or something. Like he's not Godzilla size.
Okay, yeah. I mean, he's very big for like being.
He's not like one of the little fat monsters on Doctor Who.
He's not like Gremlins or anything, but he's, compared to Godzilla, which we're gonna talk about in a bit, he's Godzilla's breakfast. He's like.
Is he scary? Do you feel the threat?
He's really fast. Like that's the thing that's terrifying. He jumps out of that river and everyone panics. And you're like, of course they did. This thing is fast and it's strange looking and like, its agenda is unclear. Like it's when it first surfaces, I think that's part of the shock of it. You're just like, what is that? And why is it so fast? And like, it's a lot of fun. Perri, I'm shocked you haven't seen this movie.
Does it have a name?
The monster?
Yes. Is it just
so? I think
this is like a very un-American treatment. I mean, it makes sense. It's not an American movie, but it's like there's no kind of like anthropomorphizing of the monster.
No,
that's not how it works.
It's like a force of nature, and it's also like it's one of those movies that you can just enjoy on like a simplest level because people are running around. It's funny, it's scary, yay! But it's also like really sharp and really smart, and I think it has a really I don't know if realistic is the right word, but it has a really good understanding of human nature and like what would actually happen if a monster rose up. And there's a lot of stuff about like bureaucracy and a lot of I think when it first came out there was like a tiny bit of controversy because there are what some could perceive as anti-American sentiments because basically what forms this monster,
not exactly anti-American, but it's certainly is kind of like
what some would say are because what forms this monster essentially is like in the opening scene you see an American scientist order his Korean underling to dump a bunch of toxic chemicals into the river, and that always goes well in movies. So
basically we're to blame.
Yes, but it's fantastically fun. See it. It's very unusual. And who wants to go next?
I'll go. I am going to see that though. I'm going with a classic, and because we were talking about monsters, and how could I not go with my favorite movie of all time, which is Jurassic Park? I am absolutely obsessed with Jurassic Park. I'm assuming I don't need to explain the story to anybody because it is the greatest movie ever, and I really mean that. But I just love that movie. I can vividly remember seeing it as a kid, and it came out in '93, so I was probably like 8, and I went with my parents, and I went with my 2 cousins who were older. They were like teenagers, and my little sister who had to have been 5 or 6 at the time. And when the T-Rex breaks out of the fence, she just got up and ran out, and I was like when that T-Rex came out, I was just absolutely amazed. And then when that whole part is over and the Brachiosaurus comes out and like it sneezes on Lex, I'm looking behind and there's my dad in the theater window holding Lonnie up to watch that part of it. But
I just want to say, because was it last year that they came out with the 3D re-release?
Yeah.
I don't think that I had seen the whole movie all the way through since it came out and it was in theaters and I saw it in theaters as a child. I was shocked by how fucking terrifying that movie is. I was like, why did my parents let me watch this when I was a child? This movie is so scary. I was like 30 and I was like in my seat going, what's going on?
I can distinctly remember being a kid and like in my room after seeing that movie and thinking that there were like velociraptors like crawling outside the window.
The kitchen scene I remember terrifying. I was actually a similar experience. I watched it with my sister. I would have been we both would have been a little bit older than you and your sister at that point, but I remember being really scared and her screaming and me trying really hard not to scream so that I would look tougher and older and more mature. But like that movie, that sequence in particular, like when they start like yelling at each other, I couldn't. It's fantastically frightening. I mean, it makes sense that for years after people were just trying to recreate it with like Congo and Godzilla 1998.
Oh, don't step all over Congo. I love.
No,
that
I like
too.
Congo, but I'm just saying
it's absurd, but.
Yeah, no, you and I can go on and on about how much. Yeah, Congo, I stand by, but it's not. It's trying to be Jurassic Park, and
everything is trying to be Jurassic Park. Dear God, let Jurassic World be even a fraction of Jurassic Park. Just not The Lost World or Jurassic Park 3. If Jurassic World is not above a certain level, my heart will like be smashed to pieces.
I'm trying not to think about it, really. I mean, because
they have Chris Pratt, so they're off to good.
It's a good.
But this could be like. Gareth Edwards and Godzilla equals Colin Trevorrow and Jurassic World, because he comes from a lower budget film world, so he has a better understanding, I would hope, of the finer details and won't get lost
really
in all
liked
that.
his last movie, Safety Not Guaranteed. It's not flawless. I take some issues with parts of it, but it's a very character-based movie, and for me that's always really important, because you can have super cool effects, but if you don't have interesting characters, like, what am I doing there?
Yeah, and I mean, that's something that even the first one did really well. Like, you understand the characters really well, you understand their dynamics, you have a lot invested in, like, their little...
Malcolm.
Yes, and everyone swoons over Ian Malcolm, especially Kristy.
That's right.
No, I just want Samuel L. Jackson at one point in my life to turn to me and say, hold on to your butts. When that happens, I will record it and I will share it with everybody and I will cherish it forever.
I feel like that's the day that everybody
she means like all the time. Perry's Twitter will just be like, in case you missed it.
I have a t-shirt, actually. My mom bought me a t-shirt. It's, like, red, and it has Samuel L. Jackson on it, and it says, hold on to your butts.
Aw. You should wear it when you see him and be like, what does my t-shirt say?
She's going to go find it. All right, well, Perri does that. I'm going to move on to my pick, which you might have guessed is Jaws. I love Jaws. Jaws is my favorite movie of all time. You can't convince me there's a more satisfying movie. Jaws is obviously about... Did you find your shirt?
I'm all bummed. I could have sworn I had it here, and it's, like, not in my closet.
Now how are you going to get Samuel Jackson to say it to you?
But, it's amazing. I'll wear it on the show next week.
There you go. But yeah, so Jaws, obviously it was like it was a blockbuster that changed the way we look at blockbusters, but there's so much more to it. Like, I watch that movie every time and I still scream when you see the head come out of the boat. I still panic when Richard Dreyfuss gets like stuck in the cage. Like, these are still things that like rattle me to my core, and every time where they have that final moment, I'm so elated. I just think that this movie, it's like the fact that it had such a troubled production just all makes it more rich and fun for me. But like, Jaws is a movie I've probably seen more than most movies I've seen. And I watch a lot of stuff repeatedly, but I watch it at least once a year, usually right before I go to the beach, which drives my family insane because I cannot stop talking about it. So like, you know, everyone else going to the beach and water and stuff like that, and I'm like, hey, just remember, and I start spouting off stuff from Jaws, and they do not appreciate it. But like, it's a movie that satisfies on a level of spectacle, on a level of scares, and on a level of really great character development. I mean, it's Steven Spielberg. It's Steven Spielberg, and it's Spielberg at, like, in my opinion, at his best, where you've got these really like powerful moments of anxiety and tension and fear, and then you've got these really quiet moments of just pure character development. Like, one of my favorite scenes as far on an emotional level is just whenever Roy Schneider and his kid are playing with their hands, and like the little kid is just mimicking everything Roy Schneider does. It's just fantastic. It's like right there's that moment where it's like you see film, like you can hear the brains of filmmakers all around the world going like, yeah, that's what I need to do. Like, Jaws just, no one can convince me Jaws isn't awesome.
I love Jaws too, but you know, I really miss the ride in Universal. That was actually my first experience ever with Jaws as a little kid, because I went there way before I should have been watching Jaws, even though I watched Jurassic Park when I was that little. But that was my first thing, and I remember just being so taken by seeing, like, the shark comes out of the water at your boat, and I had to go watch Jaws after that.
I watched it way too young. Like, I mean, I have like a legit fear of the ocean. Like, I'll go in it, but I'm never in the ocean and not being totally aware that there are sharks there. And it's not even like I hate sharks. It's like, if I ever, and I'm just gonna put this out there, if I ever get eaten by a shark, no, I won't be mad at sharks. Fair play. I shouldn't have been there. That is what Jaws taught me. Like, we are not made for the water. We have no place being in it, and you're just playing with fire.
It's amazing that no other movie has kind of played on that fear as well. Like, I guess
no. Well, no, not
with like a monster in the water. Like, I don't know. I'm just thinking of like Piranha, and that's not half
Yeah, there was Piranha. There was Shark Night.
Well, Shark Night sucked.
There's like Sharknado, there's Ghost Shark, there's Sharktopus.
No,
I mean, that's the thing. Lots of people attempted it, but like they understood it, and it's like interesting because if you can go back and find interviews with Steven Spielberg talking about the editing of that, and it was it's Thelma Schumacher, I think, and she was like arguing with him about how many frames. And he's like, no, just 2 more frames. So they spent so much money and so much time trying to get the damn shark to work. He wanted to see it on camera, and she was like, no, if we keep on this, you're gonna tell it's fake, and she kept making him cut away. And
it's kind of funny because we started off with me being like, oh, one of the things that's funny about the host is that you see the monster right away, but one of the things that makes Jaws so fucking fantastic fantastic is how little of it you see and how much more terrifying he is because you never see him.
And
or
the brilliant
not never,
use
but
of the music,
rarely.
like the fact that there's,
Yes.
you start the dun 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 dun, like it makes you prepared for it. But then of course there's that one moment where the shark jumps out of the water and they didn't prep you with the music, and you're just, and it's the part where right after Roy Scheider goes, and like.
It is not an episode of Popcorn Prosecco unless you have done an impression. And that was an excellent one.
So we can check that off our list.
Oh, guys. Anyone wondering at home, this is how I talk to people all the time.
Fact. It's also
Yes,
how she
I will
watches
agree with
movies.
that.
She sits in movie theaters and is like moves around as much as, the action hero in the movie.
If they didn't think I was bootlegging the movie, I would record you watching a movie just so everyone can enjoy that experience.
Angie sat next to me my second time watching Godzilla, and it was
Right.
Speaking of Godzilla, we should probably wrap up and move to our big review of the week, which is Godzilla. Take it away, Kristy.
Yeah, so Godzilla, I am stoked about this movie. So, I actually grew up watching Godzilla movies. They were, it was actually the same person that showed me Jaws. It was like a neighborhood friend of mine, watched all the Godzilla movies with me. So, like, monster movies were a thing. And I didn't realize going to see Godzilla how much it being good mattered to me. I feel like I was purposely like not thinking about it when I went to see it. But this Godzilla is a reboot. It kind of alludes to past Godzillas, but it's not necessarily canonical and all that kind of stuff. But basically, there are weird readings in the Philippines. There's a strange natural disaster that happens in 1999, and there's one American scientist who's an engineer desperately trying to figure out what the hell happened, and he comes across something that reveals that there's an ancient alpha predator lurking beneath the Earth's surface, and shit gets real really fast. I feel like, it's a Godzilla movie. You know what's gonna happen, guys. Godzilla, cities devastated. It's amazing. So yeah, I actually completely love this movie. I've seen it twice now, and both times, Angie can attest to the second, I squealed every time the monster came on screen. Gareth Edwards did Monsters a few years ago, and it was this really, in case you didn't see it, it was this independent movie about two people who are like trying to survive basically an alien invasion of these massive monsters. It was really low budget, but it was actually really interestingly done because it was very character focused, and then had incredible special effects. And Godzilla takes that up 100 notches. There's a lot more characters, there's a lot more spectacle, and I can understand, having watched it a second time, there are weak points, but the first time I saw this movie, I was just like radiating with joy and excitement. Like I was just freaking out about how pumped I was. So yeah, I gave it 5 stars. I think it's amazing. But I'll let you guys talk about what you think.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it too, but I don't know if I had as much fun because I really just couldn't help but to notice the script flaws, and they're pretty big ones. I mean,
Yep.
as far as it being a big monster, destroying cities, and being a bit of a disaster movie, I thought it was really successful. I had a lot of fun with it. But, the characters, they suck, except for Bryan Cranston. Bryan Cranston is incredible, but those 2 scientists at the beginning, they just drop off and you don't hear from them for I want to say at least half of the second and third act, for 40 minutes, and then all of a sudden Sally Hawkins just pops up and you're like, oh, she's still alive. Elizabeth Olsen and that kid could have been written out entirely. They serve no purpose in this movie whatsoever. And then Aaron Taylor Johnson is lovely to look at. He is a good leading man, but there is no meat to that character whatsoever. He is like a pretty boy running around defusing bombs and fighting monsters, and there's nothing to him. And the problem with that was that Elizabeth Olsen and the kid and him, they had no relationship. They just put them on screen, they're like, oh, look, we're a big happy family, and then left it at that. And if that's kind of what was driving him home and, trying to save the world and make a better place for them, that's not going to work if you don't care about the wife and the kid. So that was my big problem, but I think it is a big problem. But still, that being said, I can't lie, I had fun with this movie. It looks absolutely gorgeous. There's a lot of tension, and the monster fighting was just like the shit. I loved it. I could have watched that. I think Godzilla was a better character than almost all of these human characters.
That's interesting. I've heard a lot of criticisms about the human characters. I can understand watching it the second time, that was a little more clear to me. But the first time, I was kind of very interested in the theme of fatherhood that threads through the movie. So there are points where like it doesn't, like I can see there's a lot of complaints that Aaron Taylor Johnson is boring in this movie. I don't think he's boring. I just think that he lacks the kind of dynamicism that we're used to in a big summer disaster movie. Like I compared the movie to Independence Day in my review, and like he's not a Will Smith character. And I can see in retrospect, I think it would have probably been better if they had kind of given him a little more flash and pomp and just made Aaron Taylor Johnson's character a little more sexy. Like he's a sexy guy. That's not in question. But the character does. It's especially after Bryan Cranston, who we spend the first part of the movie with very intensely. I think it would have helped if he brought a little more color to the role. So I can understand that criticism. I don't
think that's his fault though. It's definitely in the script.
Yeah, I think that like because if this like there's no like he never has like to bring it back to Independence Day, which I learned from commenters is not as universally loved as I had thought. To bring it back to that, Will Smith has lines like "Welcome to Earth" and stuff like that, and this is in tone not like Independence Day. It is not like a shticky like goofy movie. So there's no lines like that. He doesn't have any kind of action hero lines, but I feel like not necessarily those, but something like that probably would have helped warm people up to his character a little bit, because he's a soldier, and they play it very straight as he is a soldier, and he is professional, and he doesn't panic, and I totally get all those choices.
Very boring. I don't know. I think that Godzilla gets. I mean, I think I would have probably given this 4 out of 5, and I think the thing that was missing, as you guys have both talked about a little bit already, is like the people in this movie suck. Like, they're not interesting. They're also fucking idiots. Like, I think after the movie, I was talking to Kristy, and I was like, these people don't deserve to live. I am not rooting for these people to survive.
Angie has a bigger issue with this movie. We'll have to go into spoilers for her to discuss that.
I won't get...
No, we need to talk about it, because you're a mental patient, but, like...
Yes.
Now I'm curious what this is.
Well, let's wrap up any other thoughts we have before we go into spoilers. Is there anything else you guys want to say?
Well, we could talk. Maybe let's talk a little bit about the monsters before we do that.
That's what I'm saying. That's like we have to address that. We have to go into spoilers.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about that. There's more than one monster.
No, but I think
it's the promotional
I don't think everyone knows that now.
I don't think they're trying to hide the details of what the other monsters are and their connections to each other, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I do want to say how great the action in this is. Like, it's really well shot. It's very, like, clear. It's very exciting. Kristy and I were talking after the movie about how, like, you see it from, like, the perspective of, like, a human, which sounds really simple, but then when you see them do it here, you realize how rare it is for that to happen. Like, my favorite shot in this movie is one where a person is going inside and you see the doors closing, and like through like the cracks in the door you can see the monsters, and it makes you feel like you're there, which, again, that's like a thing that everyone tries to do, but this one does it really successfully. And the monsters look good. Like, they're really well done.
Yeah, I really like I like the redesign of Godzilla a lot. I think it's fantastic and frightening looking. I don't think he looks fat. Just to allude to that bizarre controversy. But I agree. I like that the fight scenes were often, not always, but often shown them from a perspective of an actual like person on the street or in an office building. And it helps ground this disaster, which we've seen so many like massive cities being destroyed in summer movies and fall movies and every Marvel movie lately, that it can kind of become white noise of, oh, there's another city being destroyed. But in this one, it's very upsetting, and it's because, I think, of the way they ground it in these situations. Like, there are sequences that are just to show you like random people having to deal with these incredible things, and I think that helps kind of keep a perspective. And I like that a lot.
All right, you want to jump into spoilers?
Yeah, so let's jump into spoilers. So if you don't want to know anything else about Godzilla and you just want to see it, whatever, or better yet, see it and then come back and watch this section, because Angie's theory here, I mean...
It's not really a theory. But anyway, yes. So can we talk about spoilers now?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yes, this is an epic romance about two Mutos that love each other, and they will do anything to be together, and they just want to, like, get together and, like, meet up and, like, have their little, like, Muto babies, and it's, like, really sweet.
These are the villains of the movie.
And they said...
whose attempt at procreation will wipe out mankind.
Okay, but here, mankind's movie is so boring and stupid. They don't deserve to live. Humanity had a good run. You know, we were around for a while. We did a lot of great and terrible things.
Angie, tell them where you were convinced that this was the ultimate love story.
Oh my god! Like, okay, so the single best scene in this movie is when so basically what happens is that like the Mutos and Godzilla are all converging in San Francisco, and by the way, instead of humanity being like that means we should evacuate San Francisco immediately. Not only are they just like, oh, let's just not tell anyone, but like Aaron Taylor Johnson goes out of his way to tell his wife, who he loves, oh, please stay in San Francisco. I'll meet up with you there. And then he turns around and he volunteers for a suicide mission. Anyway, but going on. So the Mutos finally meet up. And, she's going to have their little Muto babies, and he brings her a nuclear warhead as a snack. So, like, you see, like, their little mouths, like, like this is her, and this is it, and then they're like this. And it's like the Lady in the Trance Spaghetti scene. It's, like, the cutest fucking thing I've ever seen. I loved it. I want to, like, just, like, hug that scene and just...
I agree with you that scene is very good at expressing that they have, like, a connection and all that. But then, like... You were killing me last night with this. 2 nights ago with this. She kept talking about like, no, but listen, humanity is a bunch of doofuses in this movie, and we had a good run, and like, yeah. So Angie feels like we are completely rooting for the wrong people the whole movie.
Yeah. By the way, I don't think that I'm completely crazy though, because I think that Gareth Evans Edwards. Sorry, very purposely. I always make that mistake. I think that he very purposely and very obviously kind of sets it up because like there's all this like family stuff. Like there's like the Juliette Binoche and Bryan Cranston and future Aaron Taylor Johnson family, and then there's the Aaron Taylor Johnson and the Elizabeth Olsen and I don't know, other kid movie. There's a lot of family stuff. And so I think that, he's very deliberately paralleling it so that you kind of understand where the Mutos are coming from. But to me, I think that that's intentional. I think that maybe he overestimated how much and how automatically we would just want to root for the humans because I was like, nope, fuck these people. The Mutos are way cuter and more fun.
Well, I wasn't rooting for humans either, but I was rooting for Godzilla. Like when they started attacking him at the end, oh my god, it broke and he falls. I seriously wanted to like jump into the screen and be like, "Are you okay?" And like I wanted him to come back.
No, I was rooting for the Mutos in that scene because they just want to hang out and have a cute little family. And why is Godzilla like? What is Godzilla's? Like, why, what is his interest here? This is a serious question. I don't understand his motivations, and it sounds dumb to be like, oh, lizard motivations, but...
They give spiritual reasons in the movie, like...
spiritual reasons are bullshit.
Ken Watanabe's like, he's there to restore balance, but that bothered my husband, too, because he's like, animals don't have a concept of balance. And, they set him up like he's a predator, but they do make the point, he doesn't eat the Mutos. So that is a problem. It is a plot problem.
Smashes them down, and then he's like, Godzilla out, back in the water, and that's it. And like he doesn't get anything out of it. They never make it clear why he, wants to save humans or wants to kill the Mutos, or even if that's what he's doing. Like, I guess it's all supposed to feel like it's on instinct, but I don't understand what those instincts are because like the Mutos and the humans otherwise are like driven by like the survival instinct and like wanting to protect the ones you love and things like that. But Godzilla just appears out of fucking nowhere, smashes some shit up, doesn't even get food out of it, and then goes home. Like my
husband
genuinely didn't get that.
And I can see his point. My husband made the point that, one, he feels like you're supposed to side with Godzilla over a pre-established connection to Godzilla, and not that the movie itself makes you want to side with him, but that, like, you already like Godzilla.
But that's very lazy of the movie. Like,
that was his argument. Yeah. And I think on the same level, the movie trusts in you to already know that Godzilla mythology is that he is a defender of mankind, and so we're supposed to go with that, where the movie may not make that argument terribly well. I can see both of those points.
I think that like, I've seen the original Godzilla, and, like, I've seen that stupid 90s movie and some other material, and, like, I know where they were going with it, but I think that it actually grew pretty well, because I got this whole mentality at the beginning, like, monsters are bad, and then over the course of the movie, they switch, and all of a sudden, in the end, when he's fighting the Mutos, I'm like, okay, I know who to root for now. So that worked
Why
pretty
would you
well
root
for me.
against the Mutos? They're the best characters. I'm not even kidding. They have the most personality. He does a better job of establishing their relationship than he does like any of the human relationships.
I want to see a Godzilla
This is
Cloverfield
completely because he
crossover
brought
movie
her a
where
snack.
it is revealed that the Mutos are actually the Cloverfield's characters' cousins or something like that because they look
There's a whole
really
family of
alike. Seriously.
That's so cute. I want to go hang out with them. I love
Of course
them.
you do.
Yeah, no.
This theory your concept here has gotten no weirder to me the days that have passed. Just like I get what you're saying and it is a good scene, but like I am not on board. Godzilla forever. I don't get it.
Well, we know your take. All right, so let's wrap
Humanity
this
had
up.
a good run, guys.
Do you guys think that people should go see this or not? Kristy, I feel like I know your answer.
Yeah, shocker. No, I totally think people should see this, and moreover, I think you should see it if you can in IMAX 3D, because actually it is a post-converted 3D, and if you want to look on CinemaBlend, we have a rundown of the entire 3D, but it's really well done, and I think it
really
actually
is.
does add an extra dimension. It's really fun to watch. So
It is one of the, because 3D is always like, oh, it brings you into the movie, but this is one of the movies where it actually did make me feel more present because it was in 3D.
All right, I'm going to disagree with that. I still don't care for 3D. It annoys me. I didn't really get anything more out of the movie than I would have had I seen it in 2D, but it is a fun movie. I would suggest going to see it this weekend.
I suggest going to see it and think really hard about who you're rooting for and why, and I feel like other people will be on my side. I'm very sincere.
if you're a
in this.
Muto supporter, please do tweet at us on Popcorn Prosecco.
Angie will appreciate that.
I will.
So that is all the time we've got for this week. But if you like what you saw today, follow along at popcornprosecco.com on Twitter. Our handle is Popcorn Prosecco. And subscribe to our YouTube channel, too, Popcorn Prosecco. You can also catch all three of us on Twitter, where you should tweet Angie about your Muto obsession. So, Angie, tell everyone where they could find you.
You can tell me all about how right I am on Twitter at AJHAN, and you can also find my writing on /film.com.
And Kristy?
You can find me at Kristy Puchko, KristyPuchko. You can find a lot of my writing on CinemaBlend, and I'm recapping Game of Thrones every Monday on the Mary Sue, so be sure to check that out.
And I'm on Twitter. My handle is Nemiroff, and you can also look up all my writing, which is all over the place in one nice little place, littlemisscritical.com. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.